Welcome to Perfect21, which is my latest release in software development, which I'm pretty proud to show you. In this video, I will show you the app main feature, and I will run you from the ground up into how I coded this and what kind of challenges I had. So first off, Perfect21 is not to play a round of blackjack, but it's used to memorize the perfect strategy. So the main feature of the app is to determine which action is to take next according to a perfect strategy chart for what they call H17 Blackjack. So let me give you an example. Hit next hand, we see that the dealer has an up card and what we call a whole card, which is always hidden and does not have blackjack. I'm not going to get into the rules of blackjack because I'm not that good anyways. And the player cards is this. So what should the player do? We select and then will be graded. Is this correct or incorrect? So I'm assuming here we should surrender, and that's not correct. We should have done hit. All right, next hand. Fully resets the board, and we have 13, queen plus 3, and the dealer has 5 plus a whole card. I think it's hit, which was not correct. I should have stood. Last one, I'm going to stand on this one, and it's incorrect. Again, the dealer had a blackjack, so my correct action would have been to say, well, none, there's no action, right? Now, how do we know what is the perfect strategy? Well, I use this website, Blackjack Apprenticeship, for a chart on what they call the H17 standard game in casinos. And there is such a thing as the player total and the dealer up card that gives you the optimal strategy to reduce the house edge to like 1% or 0.5%. And furthermore, for you guys that are tech inclined, at the bottom I made a detailed unroll menu that shows you the actual JSON that the software calls upon. So I've done that with an API. I created an API in Go. I deployed it on render. I'm going to get into all the details very soon. And then if you click next hand, you will see that as part of the JSON, we have the dealer cards and the player cards in more detail, and we have the correct action already here. If you want to cheat, say now when you get these cards, you're supposed to stand. You hit stand, you will be correct, and so on. So we get a fresh hand, so 2 player cards, 2 dealer card every time we hit next hand, and every time it does call that API, which lives here, which has the URL with /play. So if you every time you refresh this page, you actually get this JSON. And I did this on render. I call it Perfect21 API. It's public, but it's a very basic API. The API was coded in Go using Gin for the basic API, and there's one route, and it's a get route to the /play. And the front end was done it's released on Vercel, and it's Vite.js, right? So with components, etc., which I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. You can get this on my Marc-André Séguin GitHub, link in description, and that's it. So let's dig from the ground up how I built this app and the kind of challenges I had in figuring out what to do, how to do it. So first off, tipping my hat to Tech with Tim, because he's a teacher on Course Careers, and this guy is actually the guy that gave a boilerplate standard game of blackjack, which we could bet and take the decisions, etc., but it was just command lined. So what I did, I used that as my starting point in Go, and we created a struct for a card, for a deck, and we have a shoe of 6 decks. Feel free to look at the code. And then once all of that was settled, my only goal was to create a fresh game and then display that fresh game. I had a few days to work on this, just that. And then last but not least, for the API, what I did is I transformed this blackjack strategy into a JSON file, which is here, which is a perfect strategy according to the criteria. And then the API or the engine behind the API in Go will actually find out what is the absolute correct action. How do we know the correct action? Well, from the 2 player cards and the 2 dealer cards, it goes and looks that up in the JSON, and then it spits out a correct action. And in our case, the correct action will either be, again, hit, stand, none, etc. So that's been all done in Go. And then my next recipe in Go was to, well, of course, after I created the JSON file, I needed to find a way to build a strategy. So I used embed function in Go to read the file and then there was a way to compare this string with, what did the player get, what did the dealer got, and what would be the optimal strategy. Just that thing, and I was a pretty happy camper going like, hey, look, I have that URL, I can send it to friends, and we can always refresh and get a fresh game, a fresh deck, a fresh shoe, and then a correct action. And I went like, okay, with this, we need to parse it towards a front end of sorts. So I installed Vite for this project, which I'm going to open it here. It's source.tsx. And I use basic React components. So we did use state for the game itself and the results. We had these action types. And the only thing I did is upon loading the new game, we displayed that again here. So I made sure to be able to show that and to format it pretty so it would look in a browser. And then there was a way for us to look at the button and go, well, when the button was pressed in a component that I extracted, the action button, we had these different actions, and we had that's done directly in the main page, a one-page app again. We will have this correct action to display correct or incorrect if not. So after I deployed on render with the API, and I got this, and after I made this work locally, I deployed using Vercel so that we have the full, this perfect-21.vercel.app. So when we just start, we have undefined, and then this is a purely workable version. So I'm pretty stoked about this release, guys. Thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. And of course, there's several features I could implement in the future. For instance, we could have a streak. How many times in a row did you get it correct? So there would be a way to have a log of all the previous games until we refresh. There could be a way where we extend this into actually playing a full hand of blackjack and getting like you won or you lost. And then there could be a bankroll element to it. There could be a toggle switch for getting tips or not getting tips from AI. There could be a toggle switch to change the rule set of the board itself, the casino. So that's one chart, but there's different kinds of charts as well if you're not in the US, etc. Right? So there's plenty of different applications of more extensions, but I was really proud to say, well, there's this single feature that I think would be really useful for blackjack players that are attempting to memorize this thing, and it was a great opportunity for me to practice using Vite, using React. It was a great opportunity for me to look at Go and to, oh, by the way, that's a biggie. There's an API that's done in Gin with the most basic API. And again, the API has a single route. It's called play, and it does call the play function. And the play function basically only creates a game, deals the upcards, and it looks at the scenario, which is a JSON. And the scenario does include like what would be the correct action and just spits it out. And there's only a get. There's no post. I wanted to perhaps go and post the answer and see if the API could essentially resolve with if it's correct or incorrect, but I was overkill. I think the front end is enough to quiz, like, look, it's between these 6 actions. So the front end will say, is this okay or not okay? And that's it. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, link below for the full GitHub, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.